Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zoila Zarzosa. Welcome to this video presentation. Today, I'll be talking about the ethnography of communication and its role in the field of discourse analysis. By the end of this presentation, you will have a clear understanding of what this approach is, where it comes from, how it works in practice, and why it matters both for discourse analysis and for EFL teaching. What is the ethnography of communication? Firstly, what exactly is the ethnography of communication? As you can see on this slide, this approach was originally introduced by the sociolinguistic Del Himes back in 1974. Himes argued that when we study language, we should not limit ourselves to evaluating whether or not speakers are using correct grammar. Instead, his main concern was to understand how people use language effectively and appropriately within real communicative situations inside their own social and cultural communities. This is a really important between distinction because it shifts language study away from the abstract and towards the real world. Additionally, Himes emphasized that appropriateness matters just as much as grammatical accuracy. In other words, knowing the rules is not enough if you cannot communicate in a way that is socially and culturally fitting for the context you are in. The speaking model. Now, one of the most important contributions of the ethnography of communication is what we know as the speaking model, which you can see broken down on this slide. This is a structured framework developed by HIMSS that allow us to systematically analyze any communicative event. Each letter of the word speaking stands for a different component of communication. The S stands for setting and scene, meaning the time, place, and physical environment where the communication takes place. The P stands for participants, referring to everyone involved in the conversation, including the speakers and the speaker and the listener. The E stands for ends, which is about the goals of communicative purposes behind the interaction. The A stands for act sequence, which focuses on what is actually being said and the order in which events unfold. The K stands for key, which refers to the tone of spirit in which something is communicated. For example, whether a comment is made seriously or humorously. The I stands for instrumentalities, which considers the channel and code being used, such as whether the interaction is spoken or written. The N stands for norms, meaning the social rules that guide how the interaction takes place. And finally, the G stands for gens, where categorizes the type of speech events, such as a greeting, a narrative, or a debate. A role in discourse analysis. So, why does all this matter for discourse analysis? As this slide shows, the ethnography of communication plays three key roles in the field. Firstly, it bridges language and social context rather than examining language as an abstract set of rules. This approach directs attention to the social and cultural meanings that exist behind every communicative act. In this way, it connects language to the broader social practices that shape how people interact in their daily lives. Secondly, it reveals cultural norms within communication. Because communicative behaviors vary significantly across communities and cultural settings, this approach is incredibly valuable for understanding how and why people communicate differently depending on where they are from and who they are speaking to. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly for us as future EFL teachers, the speaking model provides a practical and structured and analytical tool that we can apply to any communicative event, whether in a classroom, a workplace, or a social interaction. Relevance to society, culture, and EFL teaching. As the quote on this slide highlights, Farah 1997 remind us that the speakers of the language, in particular communities, are able to communicate in a manner that is not only correct but also appropriate to the social cultural context. This idea captures the very essence of the ethnography of communication and its relevance to discourse analysis. At the level of society, this approach reveals how social power, relationships, and identities are constructed through language in real communities. At the level of culture, it covers how cultural norms and values shape the way people communicate across different contexts. With respect to context, it demonstrates that meaning cannot be fully understood without considering the situational and cultural environment in which communication takes place. And finally, for EFL teaching specifically, this approach equips educators with the tools to analyze authentic language use and design lessons that are not only linguistically accurate but also culturally aware and communicatively relevant for their students. Key takeaways conclusion. In conclusion, as this final slide summarize, the ethnography of communication is a fundamental approach in discourse analysis for several important reasons. It analyzes real communicative competence within social and cultural communities, and going far beyond what traditional grammar focused approaches can offer. The speaking model provides us with a structured and practical framework for examining any communicative event in a systematic way. Furthermore, it reminds us that language is far more than grammar. It is a social and cultural practice that is shaped by context, participants, and communicative purpose. And ultimately, this approach is directly applicable to both discourse analysis and EFL teaching, helping educators and researchers design and analyze language use in meaningful and culturally informed ways. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. Thank you.